Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. India's investment in Atmanirbharta and our existing partnerships with some of the largest and most prominent international defense firms are mutually inclusive. They're not exclusive. And that is because of the model of Atmanirbharta India has selected. And that model certainly brings the best of what the countries around the world have to offer with the model of collaboration, investment and manufacture in India. And this model doesn't just exist for sales of weapons, systems to the Indian armed forces, but also exists to make India particularly an international hub for the manufacture and export of the state of the art in the defense sector. We have a very fascinating panel here, ladies and gentlemen, and these are professionals who come from different parts of the world, Sweden, United States, and of course, Bharat or India. And it's important to highlight their experiences, which is key in making India Aatmanirbhar. We have Air Vice Marshal Michael Fernandez here with us. He's India head of Lockheed Martin. Welcome. Palmberg is country head of Saab. Alain Garcia is Vice President, India Business Development, Boeing Defense, Space and Security and Global Services. Ashok Wadhawan is Joint President and Head Land Systems, Adani Defense and Aerospace. And we also have Alexander Slater, Managing Director, US-India Business Council. Gentlemen, thank you so much and welcome for this NDTV Defense Summit. Mr. Wadhawan, I'm going to begin with you, because the India story that we keep talking about, as an Indian company, how do you see the role of foreign firms, the foreign partners, in ensuring that we achieve Atmanirbharta?
Yeah, so India's been changing in the last couple of years in defense especially. We've had foreign equipment which has been coming into India and which was imported. But now after our clarion call of Prime Minister, it changed totally with Atmanirbhar coming in. Foreign players actually have to realize that and has to play a major role. And we have been partnering with a couple of them, and we have seen that it makes a lot of difference, not just for India, but for the global. So like we partnered with one of the players, which is a global player, and we got in a technology, or we partnered and got a technology for small arms. But today what we have jointly been able to do is bring out AI into weapon systems, which is not just for here, but designed in India for global markets. So that's what the foreign players have to do. They have to realize that, yes, we need them to be with us because we need the technology, we need to upgrade our capabilities, we have to join do it, but we also need to partner together with, and bring out newer technology which is with AI for the globe being developed in India. And most of the partners whom we have done, they have realized that the talent pool which exists in India with the R&D which has already been done, if that can be combined, it becomes lethal. So we need them, they need us. But I think it's a joint partnership which India can bring in and develop it for globe.
So it's mutual here.
Yes.
And there's one company which has a very interesting motto. And we have Air Vice Marshal Fernandez to talk about it. For India, from India, for the world. This is the motto of Lockheed Martin. And Air Vice Marshal Fernandez, if selected, how do you see India becoming the world's largest exporter of the most advanced fighter jets, that is the F-16?
Marya and NDTV, thank you for having me on your panel. And and thanks for this nice question. Lockheed Martin was in India long before Atmanirbharta and Make in India actually became a buzzword. We've been in India since 2010, much before there was any compulsion for us to be here. It was more out of choice than anything else that Lockheed Martin decided to come to India. We partnered with an Indian company and opened up 2 JVs. One was making the Sikorsky cabins, S-92s, and the other one was making the empennages for the C-130Js. As I see Lockheed Martin setting up shop in India, as Mr. Wadhawan just said, there's no dearth of skill sets in India. We have a very, very good pool of people who can perform very well. And possibly that is the reason why very recently, as recent as last year, we have decided now to start making the F-16 wings, the fighter wings in India. I mean, it's testament to Lockheed Martin's commitment to India in the first place. And the other thing is also an acceptance that there's a great opportunity in India for us. Coming to your question about making in India, make for the world, you know, the F-21 that we are offering India is going to be very India specific. It's going to be catering to every need that India would require from a fighter, and it would be state of the art. More importantly is that once we start manufacturing that in India, the ecosystem that we build in India would then form part of this bigger global ecosystem, which is worth $165 billion, because the F-16 has had 4,700 aircraft made. There are approximately 3,200 flying currently in the world, and that is what makes a difference. Just that ecosystem is what is important. It's not that I'm making it for somebody, but if I have only 200 aircraft flying or 300 aircraft flying, how does the Indian ecosystem then benefit from that? When you have a fleet of these thousands, there's a lot of opportunities that would come to the Indian ecosystem.
So this is about opportunities, mutual again, because
Absolutely.
I think partnership, when you talk about, it is about both the ways. So, Mr. Garcia, this Tata Boeing Aerospace Limited facility, how do you see that shape India's future, particularly to do with the global, as a global aerospace exporter?
Well, hey, first, thank you very much for having me on the panel. It's great to be here today. So, kind of to add on to follow what Mr. Fernandez was talking about in regards to our joint venture with Tassel. We have that joint venture located in Hyderabad, and it is where we build all of the fuselages for the AH-64 Apache attack helicopter. And it's not just for the ones that India has, this is for the globe going forward here. We've had that facility up for a while. We've delivered over 250 plus fuselages from that, to include the 6 Indian Army Apache helicopters that we're planning to deliver later this year. And 90% of that, of the material that we utilize to build those fuselages are actually procured from here in India. So it's really, setting up that joint venture, it benefits both of us. We put out a great product. I would say, in 2022, Tassel actually won the Boeing Supplier of the Year award, which speaks volumes. I mean, it was, I think, over maybe 11,000 suppliers. Tassel was picked as the #1 supplier for Boeing. So it's a testament to the quality and skill that we're able to capitalize on here in India. And then along with that, setting up the capability and the infrastructure to help develop the ecosystem, because of the great work that Tassel has done on that project. We've actually started manufacturing the 737 vertical fin for our 37 MAX aircraft, also at that facility, right? And so there's added manufacturing capability that we put into that facility, and I think that will just continue to grow as the joint venture continues to produce great quality products. We will continue to invest more in not only that, but that joint venture, but look for other places where we can continue to expand as well. I think it's a great story, and it's something that, again, that just continues to highlight the potential that the defense aviation ecosystem here in India has.
The emphasis here, Mr. Palmberg, is on the ecosystem. You have had a long history here in India. Saab has been around. What is the transition that you have seen, and when was that era which India embarked or perhaps started this march towards Atmanirbharta, becoming more than just the buzzword?
Thank you for having me to start with. We sold our first product here in 1975, and that's the Carl Gustaf legacy system that has been around for many, many years. Over the years, we have also had the license agreement for production of ammunition and also the weapon. But there is also other products we have sold. But what we have found is that we have had to have Indian partners supporting us, be it in maintenance or be it for certain components or whatnot. And now we see we are taking the next steps in that development. And one of the steps we are taking is, of course, to start our own operations to a certain extent.
To sum it up, Alexander Slater, India and United States, they have a major strategic defense partnership. There is also an emphasis on transfer of sensitive technology, which was almost unthinkable 10 years ago. What changed?
Well, I think, first of all, let me start off by saying thank you to NDTV for having me take part in this conclave. It's wonderful that you convene these sessions so that we can advance the ball on international cooperation in areas like aerospace and defense. It's also wonderful to be on this panel with USIBC members Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and Adani, as well as our friends from Saab. It's great to be here. I think if you want to sum it up in one word, it's trust. I think that the history of the U.S.-India strategic relationship has been up and down over decades, but since 2008, it's generally been one that's headed in a very, very positive direction after the closure of the civil nuclear agreement between the two countries. It really was a signal, I think, to both bureaucracies that this was a priority relationship, that trust that may have been damaged in previous interactions had been restored. And we've really seen an immense quickening of that integration since 2016 going forward. That was the year that India was labeled a major defense partner of the United States. Between 2016 and 2020, 3 major defense agreements were signed that really helped the two governments integrate in areas like communications, logistics, and intelligence and surveillance and reconnaissance. And so these are signals to industry that the demand is going to be there for greater cooperation between the two countries. And industry, I think, has responded. You see that with what happened in June of last year when Prime Minister Modi went to the United States, Washington, D.C. for a state visit, and the joint statement had some incredibly remarkable announcements, including the co-production and co-manufacture of GE F414 engines for Hal's fighter jet, and as well the sort of sale and an MRO for MQ-9B drones from General Atomics. This is, as you rightly highlight, high-tech transfer. This is something that previously had never been done in the relationship, and I think, again, is a testament to the trust that the two governments have worked steadily to build since 2008, with a special attention on it since 2016. There are 2 other areas that I think I should also highlight with respect to this. The first is that one of the challenges that I think companies deal with in terms of joint ventures, in terms of doing more work in India, are export controls. Some of the highly sophisticated, highly sensitive stuff that they do create in the United States and want to create either in partnership or supply those intermediate goods for other things that are being done here in India. The Indian companies say that it's challenging to get access to them. Well, one of the nice things is that in this 2016 to 2020 period, India was identified as a tier 1 partner under sort of dual-use agreements, and so it's much easier to send dual-use technology to India going forward. And I do know that over the last 6 months, the United States government has sent multiple delegations of folks from the State Department and the Department of Commerce, which administer these export controls, to really help educate folks here at companies about what these export controls mean and how they can work with these authorities to get access to these products. And I think that's going to facilitate enhanced integration. And the other item that I'd like to highlight is the June a defense industrial cooperation agreement. This came about when Secretary of Defense came to India and met with his counterpart here to really close the loop on a roadmap for what the two countries are going to do in the future. And it really was remarkable in its breadth. It really talked about creating a supply chain between the two countries where the United States could get access to equipment, arms, but also services. In particular, ship repair and maintenance services. I know that L&T Defense, for example, is already in contract with the United States government and is supplying these services. And that's key because the United States has shown that it's going to make it over multiple administrations to pivot to Asia. And its partnership with India is critical to accomplishing this. And then finally, the last thing about building trust is doing more together. When you talk to U.S. military folks, what they say is we can talk about doing stuff together, we can plan to do stuff together, but it's actually doing stuff together on the ground that builds trust and that, again, sends a signal to companies like a major U.S. defense primes that they can partner with Indian companies to support those activities. We have the Malabar naval exercises. You had U.S. stalwart support for India during the Galwan encounter in 2020. And there's increased discussions about how India can be a supplier of munitions to the United States as it thinks about ramping up its defense supplies in dealing with threats around the world.
Yes, and this international partnership, Mr. Wadhawan, actually means the MSMEs in India will be supported. And there is an example which is there with the Adani about this project that you are currently working on, which is manufacture of 900 Hermes 900 UAV. How do you see this investment actually take shape, and how will this give the much needed support for the growth of the Indian MSMEs?
Yeah, so whatever we do in Adani is the way we are structured, or the way we are looking at is that we will have a consortium of partners working with us. So any program which we take in, if we are the prime, like the Hermes 900, which is the UAV, which is the Drishti, which we just launched, or the ammunition park we just launched in Kanpur, we are building capability along with our partners. It's not just we building integrated facility from wing to wing. We are saying that we will be doing the core part of it, but there'll be a lot of partners and MSMEs which will grow with us. Be it wire harnesses, be it structures, be it explosives, they will all come in as a park. So if we put in 1 rupee into it, the counter effect in the economy will be multiple folds, because there will be at least 10 partners who will be working along with us to develop this product to be delivered to the user. So the economy grows, MSME grows, and what we are doing is we are just giving opportunity to them, but we are bringing them in our folds in some form or the other so that they develop competencies, they develop technology. So with that, the economy grows as well as the ecosystem of defense grows with us.
Yes, so Mr. Palmberg, talking about Carl Gustav,
Yes.
the groundbreaking ceremony which you had.
Yes, we have. We are actually the first company, the first foreign company that has been approved for having 100% ownership in a defense factory here in India. And that's a big step for us. And I also think it's a big step for India that will prove to be beneficial going forward. So we are building up this in Jhajjar, here outside 50 kilometers from where we are, more or less. And we had a groundbreaking Monday, and we will, during 2025, start to deliver the M4 weapon from this facility, the latest version of the Carl Gustav system. And we will produce, we will do the assembly there, and we will also source components and whatnot from India to a high extent. And it's also part of our global industrial system, like our friends from Boeing and Lockheed Martin talk about. It's an global industrial system. So it's a big step for us, and we are really looking forward to see how this can develop. The system has been operational in the older version since 1975, as I said, and India is actually the biggest user in the world of this Carl-Gustaf rocket launcher. It's a standard weapon in the army and other segments of the Indian armed forces. So it's a good step.
It's a good step. Mr. Garcia, can you elaborate on Boeing's achievements in indigenization?
Yeah, sure. Since we've have a number of platforms here, which I'll talk about later, it made sense for us to, excuse me, to indigenize certain aspects and capabilities into India to support those platforms that are here. Just in general, though, at a high level, not just focusing on the defense, but just overall, Boeing, is one of the largest, if not the largest, OEM that sources out of India. I think we source over like 1.25 billion US dollars worth of material out of India, and we utilize over 300 suppliers to do that. And I think 25% of those suppliers are MSMEs. So to the point you were trying to make about growing that base, I think that really helps our footprint here in indigenizing our capabilities. But one of the other things too I'd like to expand on is not just sourcing, or as part of that sourcing I should say, we utilize a lot of these companies to actually build parts for our aircraft, not just the aircraft that are present here in India, but just our global portfolio. All of our advanced fighters, F-18, F-15, to our advanced jet trainer, the T-7, even our KC-46 tanker and the helicopters that we have in our portfolio, the Apache and the Chinook. We utilize companies here to build wire harnesses, electric panels, even utilizing some of the components that those companies provide to install and integrate into our platforms that are here. So there's a lot of things that we're doing here in country. To Michael's point, we were here, I think, well before the indigenization thing was a thing. We have over 80 years of history, both on the defense and commercial side with India. But we continue to grow that. And one of the things we just recently have done is we've inaugurated our engineering center campus down in Bangalore about a month and a half ago. Really, it's Boeing's biggest single footprint outside of the U.S., where we have over 5,000 engineers that'll be located there and working, again, on various projects. And again, that capability will reside here in India. The things that they develop, not just for our global fleet, both defense and commercial, but also projects that we were looking to co-develop and co-produce with here in India, will reside here. So that IP and that knowledge base will stay here.
Air Vice Marshal Fernandez, talking about the Tata LM Aerostructures Limited, and to be specific about C-130J Hercules, how is that really the example of made in India supply to the world?
So Marya, the empennage, like I told you, every C-130J flying out today all over the world has something that's been made in Adibatla, Hyderabad. Okay. So, and it's flying globally because it's the sole source for those empennages. But just if you permit me to go back to your previous questions about indigenous content and how we drag in MSMEs into our manufacture and how it benefits, and addressing your point about the C-130 empennages, when we started making the empennages in Hyderabad in 2010, the indigenous content was zero. Everything was coming from abroad. Today, after 14 years, we have 96% of indigenization in that empennage. Everything being made here, like Alain just mentioned, by people in India. And having said that, and I want to give this as a very, very good story for everybody, because when we hit 94% for the empennage, which started from zero, when we brought in the fighter wing into India, we started off from 70% plus indigenization. So, it's not easy to just bring in technology, start off from the get-go, start off straight away. I think what the foreign OEMs, like Alain said, we've been here for so many years, but we've developed an ecosystem that today we can come and say that we can source so many things which are already being made in India because we've got this background with us. So I feel that indigenous content, getting the country ready to accept technology, those are important things that we have to go through those pains. And I think we have gone through those pains. And I think India is at a very good place just now to start accepting more such work.
And Alexander, you know, the semiconductors have huge defense applications. And given the fact that there is emphasis on supply chain to ensure that it is resilient, how will that ensure that this space actually is taken care of?
So I think I should point out here that you know, even before it became a publicly discussed issue, sort of semiconductor expertise and supply chain resilience, I think obviously the pandemic really highlighted this when we couldn't get access to enough chips and people couldn't get access to cars on a timely basis, for example. India and the United States had a robust cooperation in this space. Many of our members talk about a close to 24-hour development and design supply chain between India and the United States, because India has incredibly sophisticated engineers who design semiconductors. And so I think India has a lot already to take stock of and say, hey, we contribute to a key part of the supply chain in ensuring that there's cutting-edge design for chips, regardless of their application. And many of our members, or US members, for example, have investments in India and facilities here that employ thousands of Indian semiconductor designers. Now, I think the meat of your question really comes to what happened during the pandemic, when it became clear that much of the other two parts of the supply chain, which includes fabrication, a key issue here in India, but also testing, packaging, and assembly, were concentrated in East Asia. Very few countries actually have expertise here. It used to be much more widely distributed, with a significant amount in the United States, for example, but over time it has shifted to East Asia. And it really became apparent to many countries in the world that if they wanted to have access to these critical parts of not just the defense supply chain, but really higher value manufacturing supply chain, there needed to be a more diversified supply of these two parts of the supply chain. And so again, if I want to think back to last year, it was a truly consequential year for the US-India relationship. When Prime Minister Modi was in Washington, D.C., that joint statement made a number of signature announcements about enhancing US-India cooperation in other parts of the supply chain beyond design. Of course, there was additional commitments there. I think there's close to $1 billion of announcements about investments by US companies like Applied Materials, Lam Research, AMD, to enhance skilling and engineering services here in India when it comes to semiconductors, and this is going to result in the more timely fabrication and low-cost fabrication of semiconductors. And I think the signature announcement out of that was the joint venture where the government of India is going to put a lot of money on the table to facilitate Micron's investment of hundreds of millions of dollars in India for a packaging, testing, and assembly plant in Gujarat. Now this is critical. The packaging, testing, and assembly part of the supply chain enables, once wafers are fabricated, it really finishes the product to make sure that it's ready to be input into devices, whether it be defense systems or your iPhone, for example. And I'm really bullish on the outcome of this particular part of the supply chain coming here. When you look at the history of semiconductor manufacturing, it really was countries that moved into this packaging, testing, and assembly space that were able to create the larger ecosystem that enabled them to build the suppliers and skill sets that were required to have a fabrication plant. And I know that that is India's ultimate goal, and that the government recently approved a proposal to build a fab here in India with support for it. So I'm optimistic. And what I would like to see is more packaging, testing, and assembly services come to India, because that's really going to diversify the supply chain. Because we've seen countries around the world, whether it's the United States, Europe, or India, or countries in Europe or India, putting huge industrial policy on the table to stimulate the creation of fabs. And so if we see more packaging, assembly, and testing capacity come up in India, I think that's going to really make India a central player in the supply chain.
Yes, so if there is a very sound bilateral relationship, how's that impacting Boeing's relationship with your partners here in India?
Well, I'll go back to kind of the comment I made about the long history we've had with India in general. You know, we watched the space in the U.S. India bilateral relationships, but even again, like I think it really highlighted or kind of we hit a high point last year. But I would say, just going to go back and give a little story here. About 12 years ago, I was the leader of the team that helped train and integrate the P-8 aircraft here in India. So I'm a pilot by trade, and we were able to, you know, the Indian Navy was the first foreign military customer of the P-8. So it was an honor to help train them and integrate that platform here. I think it was one of the first U.S. platforms that had come into India, and I've watched that relationship develop over the years, and it really is remarkable to see. And all the other, I would say, at least from the Boeing perspective, the Boeing platforms that have come in here. So I think again, just watching that relationship grow, you know, and Boeing's continued presence here and growing it, I think just speaks volumes about the support that we, along with other U.S. And other foreign OEMs, or at least from the U.S. side, I would say, are just watching and supporting that relationship with India on the defense side. Sorry.
I'll start wrapping up this conversation, and I'll give you the last word, Mr. Wadhawan. The question is about the policies, which have been almost like the centerpiece of the way the Atmanirbhar push has happened in the Modi government in the last 10 years. What are the areas which have been those high points which have led to this massive transition?
Yeah, I think if you go back 10 years and you see any of the defense, there were just few private sectors who were playing in this defense sector in manufacturing as such. It was more imported products which were coming in. What changed in the last few years is the whole push of saying it has to be made in India. Then saying, okay, let the technology come in and will be made in India. So that should, or putting that full stop and saying, if it's not made in India, it's not going to happen. And that was the biggest change which took place, which is what I think the private sector got that push and saying, okay, now we know that we will get orders, or we will, if we build something, government of India will buy. Because, you know, end of the day, you have to have a customer in India, then it can be sold to the world. So if the customer in India now has the faith and knows, and the foreign players know that they have to come with Indian partners and build the capability here, that changes everything. So I think that's the biggest change. The second big major change is for the world, the exports. Like Rajnath Singh in the morning, the defense minister said that, you know, we were, 1,000 crores being exported 10 years back. Today we are 20,000 crores, and it's going to become 50,000 crores, which also changes the policy of the government to push Indian players to get those export orders, making available that opportunity for exports, as well as giving you the licenses to be able to export. So I think both these things have opened a market which has pushed the private sector to build capability and bring in the technology and now start doing R&D.
Okay, just to sum it up, you know, since you are an international firm here, how do you see, Mr. Palmberg, particularly to do with policies which will create even better opportunities for self-reliance?
Yeah. I mean, historically, all the systems we have said have sold here to India, be it from AIS system that is protecting the coast, or be it underwater systems or not. It's been all global buy in one way or another. And now when we have established our own company down here for production, and we will see how that will develop going forward. But I think if we are a foreign company, we are paying tax in India, we are employing Indian citizens, I would also expect to see some changes in treatment, because there are categorizations in the defense acquisition policy that provides us from participating in competitions. And I think that is fair if we are coming, that is unfair if we are coming here and investing our money in India and in supporting self-reliant capability build-up and make in India.
All right, let's end on that note. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us for this Defense Summit of NDTV. And please join us for lunch. I think the floor is opening up now. Yes, please come.